my great pleasure to be the chair of this session with two great leaders in the fiscal, banking, economic policy world. Christos Megalou, who I think you all know is the very distinguished CEO of Piraeus Bank, and Greene, who is the chief economist, risk officer for Kroll, as well as serving on many important policy positions, including some new ones she might share with you. But what we're going to do today is look at the global economy, but very importantly, we're kind of going to start here in Greece first. We don't have a lot of time. And Christos, before I turn to you, I want to say how proud we were at the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils when we held our Global Innovation Summit last November, and you accepted the Global Competitiveness Award for your leadership with your tremendous career in banking and finance and all your contributions. So thank you for accepting that.
Thank you.
So I know there's been lots of discussion here about the investment climate in Greece, and how do you see the environment here for attracting the high value investment that's going to continue the growth trajectory of Greece?
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you very much for your kind words. I'm really honored, as we've already discussed, and good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to start by saying global community and investors look at Greece positively. Why? For three reasons. Number one, the projected GDP growth is expected to be twice as much as the European average, and it looks like that this could be a permanent feature over the next few years. Number two, the fact that we are getting very close in getting the investment grade, and we hope post-elections towards third, fourth quarter of this year, we will be in a position to get it, and this will be a big boost in terms of financial and real investment in the economy. And number three, the nature of investment itself in the country, investments in hospitality, in renewable energy, in infrastructure, is what is attracting the global investment community, and we have seen many of the big boys in private equity and real business and real economy coming to Greece to invest. So, expecting for the next few years, the next 4 years, more than 120 to 150 billion of investment, which will really change the economy for sure.
Thank you. Megan, you also have a long history of association with Greece, so maybe you could give us your perspective on that in terms of the future growth trajectory and what are the good signs you see, but also some challenges.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So the good sign is undoubtedly the investment picture, where there has been a ton of investment coming in over the past 2 years, really. That's unambiguously positive. The challenge, I think, is what happens when Greece is really tested in the markets again. And when I say tested in the markets, it's because Greece has had this debt restructuring. It doesn't really have that much due maturing for the next 10 years. So it's been given this gift of 10 years roughly where it can implement some real reforms and hopefully come out the other side stronger. And my worry is that actually it's squandering that gift, that 10 years. So the budget deficit is looking better. The debt stock has come down. Most of that is because of inflation, which is a regression. It's a regressive tax, so it's not good for equality. So that's not the best way to bring down the deficit and debt burden. So I think on the other side, we need to worry about that. If you look at the current account, Greece has actually never really been in current account surplus. That is shocking given the adjustment Greece had to go through during the crisis. And so there are obviously some structural rigidities there. If you look at the mix between the private sector savings to investment balance and the public sector, most of the current account deficit is a result of the public sector savings to investment balance. So it's effectively a reflection of fiscal policy. I think that's something that's going to be problematic down the line. So Greece has this great 10-year period. So far, it hasn't done much to convince me that it is really structurally changed. And I think that could be a challenge, in a number of years, but something that everyone should think about now.
Do you want to comment, Christos?
Just to say that there are a lot of structural changes that have been implemented. and there is a great window over the next few years where debt is really very, very low serviced, to continue on the reform agenda. And as long as we continue on the reform agenda, then Greece will be in a position to generate further growth, investment, and actually, deal with some of the issues that Megan is pointing out.
I want to turn to the issue now of the future investments, the future trajectory for the transformation of energy, advanced energy, addressing climate, the move toward zero carbon world, et cetera. Greece is really at the forefront of building a sustainable green economy. It's a commitment in Europe, and it's also a strong commitment in the United States. And as you know, in the United States, we are hopefully getting we have the authorization, but not the appropriation of trillions of dollars in the Inflation Recovery Act, the CHIPS Plus Science Act, to invest in the whole reindustrialization of the United States and semiconductors, green energy, and many see these as subsidies. And of course, in the EU, you have the tremendous amount of resources coming from the investments after COVID. So turning to that, how do you, Christos, as the CEO of the largest and oldest private bank, how do you treat the issue of the subsidies opportunity, but also the private sector investments that's needed to create a transition to a green, zero carbon environment here in Greece?
The subsidies and all the work that is being done through the EU Green Deal investment plan or the US Inflation Reduction Act are a short-term measure that will help a lot in the initial phases on investment for a green energy transition and renewable energy economy. But of course, this cannot be a long-term solution. That's very clear. For our part, we take advantage, both as a bank but also as an economy in Greece, to use very effectively the EU Green Deal investment plan, create quite a lot of investments using the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which reduces significantly the cost of funding. And as a result, Greece is one of the countries in the forefront of Europe in actually the energy transition. And by the way, Piraeus Bank is one of the financial institutions in Europe, I dare say, that is in the forefront of that financing. We very recently, only a couple of days ago, have been included for the third consecutive time in the Financial Times Europe's Climate Leaders, and we are the only Greek bank and the only company that has been included in all 3 years. So we are very proud of our heritage. We are very active in financing the green transition. We take advantage of the subsidies offered by those deals, but we recognize that the economy has to pick up, and these are not permanent solutions.
Excellent. And Megan, I'm sure as an economist, you're probably not a big fan of subsidies. So what is your comment on this? You could talk about the U.S., but also Europe and Greece.
Yeah, sure. So there are many ways you can try to do the green transition, and choreography is really everything. The U.S. in the Inflation Reduction Act has chosen to only eat dessert and not eat any broccoli, so it's only going with subsidies and isn't using any sticks at all. The Europeans take a much more balanced approach between sticks and carrots, and I think and as an economist, if you're going to design an incentive, it doesn't really make sense to only use dessert to try to get rid of a negative externality in your economy. So no economist would come up and say we should do this all just through subsidies. It's the political reality in the U.S. I mean, the senior economists at the White House read the same textbooks I did. They believe the same, but they can't get it passed or get it past a few senators in government. So I think it's political realities that have driven the choreography in the U.S., but like I said, in Europe, where things like a carbon tax or something that is seriously discussed, that's a much more balanced approach. The inflationary implications of it are different, though. If you use more sticks, then actually it tends to be more inflationary. So if you embed the price of something that we used to consider free, fossil fuels, into your economy, that's inflationary, and so that will create a challenge for policymakers. You can mitigate that with subsidies, of course, by just subsidizing an alternative, and then that needn't be inflationary. So there's a balance to be struck. I think generally Europe is closer to that balance than the U.S. is.
Well, I'll just add, with the debt ceiling issue in the United States and a Republican House looking at, cutting spending, the issue of whether these funds are going to be, as I said, actually appropriated is severe. But I'm going to challenge what you said on complete subsidies, because certainly investment in research and development at our great universities, at our national labs, and public-private partnerships is absolutely critical for the future. And I know the U.S. Council on Competitiveness has been a big supporter of revitalizing our domestic advanced manufacturing. Christos, we don't, of course, have a lot of time here, 20 minutes to have this discussion with these two great leaders, but what are some of the most important developments you see over the horizon in kind of the global system? Yes, finance, but other issues as well that may keep you up at night and that you're poised to be looking out into the horizon to address?
If we wanted to look in the medium to longer term and the global scene, my big worry would sum it as follows. The worsening U.S.-China relations. That, I'm afraid will have, if continues to be that way, will have a real implication both in the global economy but also the geopolitical scene. So I guess you need inspired leadership to try and get out of where we are right now, because it doesn't look that positive in that respect. The second thing that I'm thinking about is the diminishing importance of Europe following the Russian invasion in Ukraine, and especially the way Europe is reacting, but also the fact that from an economic point of view is suffering more than China, more than the US, and I dare say even more than Russia. So that is a problem for Europe, and if we don't really get our act together as Europeans, I'm afraid that this is going to continue. So that's another big worry of mine. I must say I don't worry that much about the financial crisis that emerged, SVB and Credit Suisse. My old shop is really sad to see it go that way, but nevertheless, I think it's idiosyncratic, I think it's specific, and it's not going to affect either Europe especially, or even the US, I dare say. And finally, just one thought. I was just thinking that only recently India emerged as the most populous country in the world, surpassing China. That is a very important thing to think about the future, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Apple and Cook himself was there to open up the store in New Delhi only, Apple store in New Delhi only recently. So these are the kind of things that I wanted to bring, Deborah, to all our attention.
And all of you come downstairs for the next discussion on the technology frontiers. We have a great group of leaders that are going to address some of these technology innovations and what they mean to humanity. Megan, let me ask you, as an economist, I saw this headline in the Financial Times, the Daily Telegraph. I know you write for Financial Times, April 23rd, and it says here, the giant black cloud that hangs over economic recovery in Europe and the issues around quantitative tightening and inflation and energy security. Do you want a quick comment on your view on that?
Sure, in the remaining 4 minutes.
No, you don't
I'm
have
just
4
kidding.
minutes because
I'm
we've got
okay.
one more question.
Yeah, okay, in a few seconds. I think that Europe looks much better than it did 4 months ago in terms of economic indicators. It's holding up much better. That's largely thanks to the weather, which is lucky. It's not because of good policy necessarily. That said, economists are now saying, well, maybe Europe won't go into recession. I don't think that's worth taking out the ticker tape over and throwing a parade. I think that what we're looking at, if it's not a recession for Europe, is probably stagnation. And to most people, that feels pretty much the same. So I do think that Europe has a long, hard slog ahead of it. Peak inflation, in terms of core inflation, is still ahead of us in Europe. It's mostly supply driven. It's also driven by corporate greed, so it's being called greedflation right now. I mention this because there's not a whole lot a central bank can do about that. So that will be an immediate challenge. And then potential growth across the Eurozone is generally pretty low. And it's going to be difficult how to figure out how to boost that. You can either increase your labor force and increase productivity, or you can engage in technological innovation and increase productivity. I don't see much of a debate in Europe talking about immigration. Demographics are looking pretty bad, so I wouldn't count on the labor force in Europe to boost potential growth. And on the technological innovation front, there aren't that many tech giants in Europe that I can think of, so that's going to be tough as well. So it will be a long slog, even if Europe avoids a recession.
Thank you, because you actually answered my last question I was going to have for you about technology and productivity. So thank you for making that connection. Christos, Piraeus Bank is an innovator. I had the opportunity last November to see what was going on in Ioannina with the first digital bank. You are also doing amazing things. Today I know you launched your new initiative on inclusiveness, social equity, women, all the things. I mean, this is a great initiative. Share a little bit about that and how that also is good for business in addition to being great for Greece and the region and the world at large.
Look, for us in Piraeus Bank, it's very important to be able to give back to the society some of the value we generate and create, especially now where we are in a much stronger position than ever before, financially and capital-wise. So it's a very important program that we have just launched and expanded as part of our Equal initiative to basically talk about not only gender equality, but also youth upskilling, reskilling, and education, and more importantly, go into minorities, refugees. Unfortunately, in Greece we have many, and we may have many more, but also other minorities that I feel it, and we feel it as a financial institution, as an obligation that we need to return back to the society, and we need to cater for. So we have designed a program which is really very inclusive. We are very proud of the work we are doing in that respect with some great leaders like UNICEF, like the United Nations refugees representative here in Greece. And for that, we will continue because we feel it as an obligation to return to the society. And expect more on that front. And I hope we will be in a position next year to come up with even greater initiatives in that regard.
Thank you. And I, as the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils, the host for this discussion, I want to say that Piraeus Bank is a member, yourself and Chairman George Hadjinicolaou. You are really walking the talk of our pillars of competitiveness: innovation, sustainability, resiliency, partnerships, and inclusivity. And thank you for your leadership. And finally, we did not do our answers using ChatGPT, but next year we will. We're going to generate the answers and see what we come up with. But if you want to hear about the frontiers of artificial intelligence, quantum, biotech revolutions, come down below to the next discussion of the GFCC starting in 1 moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.